delivering the vaccine. The first Pfizer shots are given and more are on their way to hospitals and nursing homes in the fight against the coronavirus. The Electoral College, why today is an important day in the 2020 presidential election. All eyes on Georgia. 3 weeks until the pivotal runoff that will determine which party controls the Senate. And the center of our lives. Pope Francis says good things happen when we focus on Christ instead of ourselves. We'll explain. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, December 14th, 2020. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight, COVID D-Day, the massive distribution effort to vaccinate Americans who need it the most is underway. The first COVID-19 vaccinations administered in the U.S. come on the heels of this weekend's emergency approval from the FDA. The historic breakthrough marks what officials call the beginning of the end. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that people 16 years and older can get this vaccine, but nursing home residents and frontline healthcare workers will be some of the first to receive a shot. A massive vaccine rollout is now underway.
The cheers signaling a hopeful development amid a global virus fight, as a New York City nurse became one of the first people in the U.S. vaccinated against the coronavirus this morning.
I received the vaccine a short while ago. I feel great. It didn't feel any different from receiving my annual influenza vaccine.
Emergency approval from the FDA over the weekend, kicking off the vaccine rollout, with stocked freight trucks leaving the Pfizer plant in Michigan. The first shipments now arriving across the U.S. Here, some healthcare workers are receiving the vaccination in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar describing the initial distribution plan.
145 sites expected to receive vaccine today, 425 tomorrow, and 66 sites on Wednesday.
Secretary Azar says healthcare payers are handling administration costs, so no American faces an out-of-pocket expense for the vaccine. The CEO of Pfizer says millions of doses will be rolled out globally.
This year, we will have around 50 million doses available, of which most of them have already been manufactured.
On the ethics of the Pfizer vaccine, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has released a statement saying, in part, the reason to accept the new COVID-19 vaccine is sufficiently serious to justify its use despite a remote connection to abortion-derived cell lines. They've said the same thing about the Moderna vaccine, which could be approved soon. In the studio, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Presidential electors in all 50 states and D.C. cast their votes today for the next president of the United States. President-elect Joe Biden, who is set to speak later tonight, is widely expected to win 306 electoral votes over President Donald Trump's 232. But President Trump is not expected to concede. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
President Donald Trump has repeatedly alleged the November 3rd election was rigged. On Twitter today, he said that in swing states, they stopped counting ballots in the middle of the night so they could figure out how many votes were needed to steal the election. Now, the courts remain unconvinced, and today the Electoral College went ahead with its business.
The electors of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania have cast 20 votes for the Honorable Joseph R. Biden for President of the United States, and 20 votes for the Honorable Kamala D. Harris for Vice President of the United States.
We have 6 votes for Joseph R. Biden for President and 6 votes for Kamala D. Harris for Vice President.
I am pleased to announce that Joseph R. Biden has received 16 votes for President of the United States.
Following the November 3rd election, Joe Biden was projected to win 306 Electoral College votes. You only need 270, of course. Again, those votes took place all over the country today, including battleground states Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Georgia, which you just saw there. Social distancing, mask wearing, and Zoom calls the norm today. Now, Ohio, their 18 Electoral College votes went to President Donald Trump today. He won that state substantially. Now, for the last several decades, whoever won Ohio was pretty much guaranteed the presidency. Up next, Congress will tally the Electoral College votes in early January. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Joining me now on Skype is Adam White, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute and law professor at the Antonin Scalia Law School. Adam, welcome back. Always good to see you. So help us put today in perspective, its historical significance and its significance to this year's presidential election.
Well, this is the milestone in the constitutional process for electing the president. The voting by the states with respect to the Electoral College puts an end to the process of counting votes in the state and begins the process of concluding the election in Congress, where the votes will be counted.
Adam, what does today's Electoral College vote, what does it mean for President Trump's legal efforts, and could they still have an impact at this point?
Well, this puts a final end to any prospect of litigating the counting of popular votes in the individual states. This now turns to Congress, where the House and the Senate would carry out the normally pro forma duty of just counting the votes, which we already know have been counted in the individual states. Counting the electoral votes. Now, it's possible that this could be challenged in Congress if there's an objection from a member of the House and a member of the Senate. It would be extraordinary if this actually changed the outcome of the election. But from here on out, Congress really is in control. What happens next will not be decided in the courts.
And as you know, Congress meets January 6th to count and to certify the electoral votes. Is it possible the vote count could be contested at that time? And what do you think that process would look like?
Given the politics surrounding the election and the aftermath of the election, it seems inevitable that there will be a member of the House and a member of the Senate willing to contest some of the electoral votes that have been submitted. At that point, the joint session of Congress would resolve down into the two individual houses, the House and the Senate, where each would deliberate upon the objection to the votes. There's really no formal constitutional process for reconsidering electoral votes that have been sent to Washington from the states. It will be an extraordinary process. I think the likelihood of anything other than the election of Joe Biden is at this point minuscule, but we can't count out the possibility of somebody trying a last-ditch effort to challenge this in Congress. It'll be fascinating to see it all play out with the sitting Vice President, Michael Pence, serving as the president of the Senate, much like then Vice President Al Gore presided over this in the aftermath of the 2000 election.
Yeah, it will be pretty interesting indeed. What else are you watching, Adam, and what should we be looking for?
Well, at this point, I think everybody is watching to see which member of the House and which of the Senate will try to be the one to lodge the inevitable objection contesting former Vice President Biden's victory in the states. And we'll see what happens from there. But it really is open-ended at this point. Normally, again, this is just a pro forma process. And whatever happens will almost surely be an extraordinary departure from that tradition.
Absolutely. Well, Adam, we really appreciate your time today. Adam White, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute and law professor at the Antonin Scalia Law School. Thank you again for your insights.
Thank you.
The Archdiocese of Washington is suing the District of Columbia over restrictions on public worship during the coronavirus pandemic. The filing states in part, quote, "These arbitrary restrictions violate the rights of more than 650,000 D.C. area Catholics who, at the end of this most difficult year, now face the chilling prospect of being told that there is no room for them at the church this Christmas." Joining me now on Skype is Montse Alvarado, Vice President and Executive Director at Becket, a nonprofit law firm dedicated to protecting religious freedom. Becket is representing the Archdiocese of Washington in this case. Montse, welcome back. Always so great to see you. The Archdiocese points out that half of the Catholic churches in the district can accommodate 500 people or more. Now, the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception can actually seat 10,000 1,000 people, but that too is subject to a 50-person cap on attendance. This, while secular businesses are allowed capacity-based limits. And once again, this does appear to apply a double standard when it comes to religious freedom. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me. You've got it right. This is a double standard for houses of worship where you can sit at a restaurant for 90 minutes with no mask. But those of us who know that you can have a 45-minute liturgy, especially now that we're not singing in mass, you have a completely different set of circumstances and facts that we're dealing here. We're dealing with facts. And those facts are that you can be in a church for 45 minutes with your family, socially distanced in mass, and be completely safe. And the Archdiocese is asking the district court to allow it to hold the safe, socially distanced, mask-wearing worship service in time for Christmas. Unfortunately, despite this recent Supreme Court decision, D.C. would not change this arbitrary cap of 50 people that you just described at places that are so large, like the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, which can hold the Statue of Liberty twice.
Yeah, it really is a little unbelievable. Montse, has there been any response from D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser on this, and any reasons given for the difference?
You know, the Archdiocese has been working with D.C. for months, and it has an exemplary safety record of thousands of masses with no known COVID spread. So it was really rare and really bizarre that the district wasn't willing to come to the table and have a discussion about what it meant to open churches back up with proportionality. That's the word that Cardinal Gregory has been using. Proportionality, the idea that when you have these large spaces, you can fit more people and still be safe.
Yeah, and as you know, this is just the latest in a series of challenges to state limits on public worship during this pandemic. Last month, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Brooklyn Diocese and Orthodox Jewish synagogues in their case against New York's COVID restrictions. What influence, if any, do you think this will have on this lawsuit?
Oh, a huge influence, Tracy. The law here is clear. If D.C. can allow restaurants to have hundreds of patrons, often wearing no masks at all, for alcohol and meals, then it has no reason to say that the Archdiocese can't hold safe, socially distanced mass for Christmas Eve. And the Supreme Court made that very clear. These arbitrary caps cannot be placed on these synagogues and these houses of worship. And the targeting that was being done by Governor Cuomo was 100% unconstitutional.
Yeah, and one thing I also want to point out, the lawsuit points this out, that there's an immediacy here as we're in the season of Advent with Christmas fast approaching. What exactly does the Archdiocese of Washington, what is it requesting?
You've got 11 days to go to Christmas. They just want to get rid of those caps. They want to get rid of those 50-person limits for the larger churches and the larger basilicas, where they can hold more people and bring the Eucharist and the essential nature of their faith to the people.
All right, Montse, we have about 30 seconds left. Any final thoughts?
It's really important for us to remember that it is possible to worship and be safe at the same time. I think the Cardinal is at the forefront of this important fight, making a point about what's reasonable, that people shouldn't be afraid. John Paul II told everyone, be not afraid. Remember, we can be together and worship at the same time.
All right, great point. We'll leave it right there. Thank you so much, Montse. Always great to have you on. Montse Alvarado, Vice President and Executive Director at Becket. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tracy.
Coming up, control of the U.S. Senate comes down to the Senate runoff in Georgia. Tonight, voters are casting in-person ballots as early voting begins in Georgia, where two runoff elections will decide which political party holds a majority in the U.S. Senate. Analysts predict the runoffs could become the most expensive races in history. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
Most expensive indeed. So how much money are we talking about? Well, How about $500 million, $500 million for just 2 races? Yeah, 2 Senate races. It's hard to believe. And majority of the money is coming from out of state, which goes to show you just how important these 2 races are. Despite COVID-19 restrictions, the politicking is in full swing in the Peach State.
This is about saving America. And you know why? Because of what Chuck Schumer said, pretty much laid it all out there in a few simple words. He said, now we take Georgia, then we change America.
Over the weekend, Republican Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue hit several cities across the state, and they were not alone. A half a dozen former and current lawmakers accompanied them on the Save America bus tour.
It's to save America. It's to save the Senate. And that's why we're here.
They want to take away your private health insurance. They want to take away your police.
While their opponents, Democratic candidates Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, each have bus tours of their own. With more than half of the record 5 million voters in the November 3rd election casting their ballots during the first 2 weeks, candidates know it's crunch time. The Senate currently stands at 50 Republicans and 48 Democrats. If Democrats win both runoffs, the party will have control of the chamber because Vice President-elect Kamala Harris would break any ties. But if Republicans win one of the 2 races, they will maintain control. Democrats say they are prepared to win due to the level of investment.
We know from the numbers that we're in a good place. 1.2 million absentee ballots have been requested thus far. And just to put that into context, 1.3 million were requested for all of the general election.
Senator David Perdue has publicly criticized the amount of money that's coming from out of state for the Democratic Party. Now, statistics show from campaign finance figures that majority of the money for Democrats is coming from Washington, D.C., from the organization known as ActBlue. Reporting from the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Mets outfielder Tim Tebow will address next month's Rose Dinner as part of the annual March for Life. The all-around athlete, who is a 2-time national champion and first-round NFL draft pick, now plays for the New York Mets. Organizers with the March for Life say that he will be the keynote speaker for the Rose Dinner Gala. In addition, Knights of Columbus Supreme Knight Carl Anderson will be honored with the Pro-Life Legacy Award. Up next, why people in Poland are defending St. John Paul II. And Pope Francis reminds the faithful why being a Christian is hard but not impossible. 1,700 professors in Poland are defending St. John Paul II in the wake of the Vatican's report on former U.S. Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. According to critics, the Polish Pope turned a blind eye to McCarrick's abuse accusations over a 27-year period. Joining us now with more on the story is EWTN News Rome correspondent Colin Flynn. Colin, good to see you. So tell us, how did this appeal come about?
Good evening, Tracy. Well, this appeal has been signed by 17,000 people, many of them prominent professors and academics, defending St. John Paul II in the wake of the McCarrick report. Now, the professors who signed this appeal are from Polish universities and research institutions, and some of the signatures include people like Hanna Sukoka, Poland's first female prime minister, former foreign minister Adam Daniel Rothfield, and physicists, a film director, and other well-known Polish people. Those behind the appeal said it was launched because, and I quote, an impressive long list of John Paul II's merits and accomplishments are being challenged and erased. And for young people who were born after his death, the deformed, false and belittled image of the Pope could become the only one they will know of him. We appeal to all people of goodwill to come to their senses. Now, Tracy, the professors from these Polish universities went on to say there is a huge gap between promoting one of the most serious offences and making wrong staffing decisions due to inadequate knowledge or outright false information.
Colin, I know that some groups in Poland are calling for the removal of St. John Paul II statues. What more can you tell us about that?
That's right, Tracy. Some are calling for the removal of public memorials to the late Pope, and this, it seems, is what is driving these professors and academics to take this stand in defence of the Polish Pope. The argument really boils down to, why did Pope John Paul II promote McCarrick, despite rumours about him? Now, the McCarrick report was released 2 months ago, which said that Pope John Paul II, he had been warned of McCarrick's behaviour, and indeed had even received a letter outlining concerns from Cardinal John O'Connor, who was then Archbishop of New York. But despite this, Pope John Paul II appointed McCarrick as Archbishop of Washington in 2000 and then made him a cardinal a year later. Now, the report also details that McCarrick wrote to the Holy See personally, claiming his innocence. The Vatican report did not point the blame at Pope John Paul II, and it said that McCarrick's denial was believable, and this led the Pope's decision to name McCarrick to DC.
Colin, how are church officials in Poland and the Vatican responding?
Well, the Vatican never came out with a statement, but left it to church leaders in Poland to respond to the criticism directly. Now, the president of the Polish Bishops' Conference said that anyone who has thoroughly researched Pope John Paul II's pontificate knows very well his priorities to protect children and the youth. He goes on to say, it was he who saw the future of the church in the young, and therefore he was the first to introduce the church's legal regulations to protect the weakest, and thus initiated the process of detecting sexual crimes and punishing clergymen who perpetrated them.
Well, Colin Flynn, EWTN Newsroom correspondent, thank you so much for that report, Colin.
Thank you, Tracy.
Pope Francis says the Vatican is committed to cutting net emissions by the year 2050.
Promover una educación para la ecología integral.
Addressing a United Nations group working on the climate, the Holy Father said the Vatican plans to reduce water and electricity usage. The Holy See is also seeking to educate people on the importance of the environment. It was a busy weekend for Pope Francis. On Saturday, he celebrated Mass on the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Abundancia, bendición y don.
The Holy Father says the Virgin Mary teaches us about God's blessings and the gift that he wants to share with us. Pope Francis also asked the faithful to think about the life of the Blessed Virgin, especially her example of always being generous and patient to everyone. On Saturday was also the 40th anniversary of EWTN's founding by Mother Angelica. Meantime, at the Vatican, Pope Francis said yesterday, being a Christian is not easy, but with Christ, anything is possible.
Cristiano è gioioso nel cuore.
At his Sunday address to pilgrims, the Holy Father said the key to Christian joy is to put Jesus at the center of our lives instead of putting ourselves there. Doing so will lead us on a path of joy that will inspire those around us. And before we go, here's a look at some of your nativity scenes that you sent in to EWTN News Nightly. This one right here comes from Elena Garcia in Chicago, Illinois. What a unique one. I love that. And next is Patsy Ortiz from Las Vegas, Nevada, who sent us this beautiful picture of her nativity scene. That's great. Greg Settlemeyer from San Diego, California, shows us this outdoor scene. He says his father built it for the family. That is beautiful. And Vincent and Teresa Saker shares this one from their home in Lincoln, Nebraska. Great as well. And Sister Therese Mueller, she is a sister of the Sorrowful Mother. She sent us this right here of this special creche. That is absolutely gorgeous. Oh, so beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing those with us. And a reminder that you can send your creche photos to our EWTN News Nightly Twitter or Facebook pages, or by emailing EWTNnewsnightly@EWTN.com. Be sure to include your name and where you are from, and you could see them featured right here on EWTN News Nightly. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.